Sorry about that. We're going to talk about that later. I'll see you at 7. Well, it should be easier to use that iron now that it's plugged in. Hi everybody, I just knocked everything over, so give me just a second here, and I'll be able to actually get going. I plugged something in. I had forgotten to plug in my iron, which is going to make it really hard to use today. And the computer got weird, and things had gotten strange, and then stuff started to fall, and you know those kinds of days, right? It's not just me, right? Okay. Welcome, welcome. This is StashBlaster Quilts. I'm Maria. My mannequin just fell over. For those of you who don't know, this is a mannequin used for drawing and that kind of stuff. He lives on my desk just for fun, but I'll move him over here for you now. Anyway, this is StashBlaster Quilts. Welcome. I'm Maria, and my goal here is to help you make more quilts in less time with a lot less stress. Today you're getting me fully coiffed, although you can't tell because the wind got a hold of me. Made up the whole 9 yards because I had meetings today, and got home pretty much just in time to eat and come upstairs. So here we are. So, as usual, I am a professional organizer, and so we always start with a tip for the day. There's actually a story that goes along with this, so it's going to be a little bit longer than usual, but one of my guilds, the Springfield Quilt Guild, had something that we called a spring fling. And so we had, basically it's a silent raffle kind of thing. There were a table of lots of different things you could just buy now. And then there was a brown bag auction where you get raffle tickets and you drop, you put your name on them and you drop it in the bag, and then you get to win something. And so I volunteered 2 things in the raffle. I'm going to give somebody a free hour of organizing consultation, and the other prize was that I would hand bind, up to a king size quilt. And so people dropped their raffle tickets in, and I bought raffle tickets and I dropped my raffle tickets in, and I actually did win a bag of charms. And so I went through them and I pulled the ones that I wanted. And somebody else I know had put tickets in the bag and didn't win, obviously, because I did. And so I took the bag in and I gave her the leftover charms. Now, there's several people who did this. So Jocelyn, for example, won one of those little tiny micro rotary blade cutters and this Fiskars, but she doesn't use Fiskars, so I put a brand new blade in this one and I'll be using it tonight. I like the way they feel in my hand. I also use the Martelli ergonomic one a lot. If I'm doing a lot of cutting, I pull out the Martelli. But this is what she gave to me because she didn't want it. And then Judy, who some of you have seen comment on this live stream, well, not this one yet today, but on my channel here, she won the prize everybody wanted. It was a 3-drawer, probably 14-inch wide sets of drawers, plastic thing, and it was chock-a-block full of stuff, really great stuff. And I was like, ugh, I am so jealous. I wanted all that thread. And she's just like, well, you want any of it? And I said, keep what you want, etc. If there's any you don't want, then sure. So thanks to Judy, I now have all these cool variegated threads. Because I don't tend to use variegated, this is giving me a chance to play with them without spending a butt ton of money. This one's kind of interesting, not only because it's all primary colors, but it's a much thicker thread. It's almost a cording. And so this ought to be a lot of fun to play with too. So Judy, if you're on, again, thank you. She's the best. She's somebody I see on a regular basis, and life gets a lot better when I get to see my friends. So what's the tip? What does this have to do with the tip? The tip for this week is that sometimes free things can cost you a lot. I have a lot of people who, when I go into their homes to help them organize, have tons of stuff that they picked up for free. It could be mugs or water bottles. It could be sewing equipment that they won at a door prize for something, or a lot of times people who go to home shows, when you walk in, they give you a bag, and the bag's already pre-stuffed with some advertising material because the vendors pay for that. But as they walk around, they collect more and more and more handouts and candy and all this. The vendors, they want you to come to their table because they know that if you come to the table and you take something, whether it's a stress ball or a fun size Snickers bar or whatever it is, there's a social pressure that you're going to talk to them. And so at the very least, they can tell you what they do so that you'll know there's a company out there that does that. So I've had clients, I can't tell you how many of these bags that they brought home from a convention, from a home show, from something, that they never looked in again. Sometimes they didn't even take the candy out. So I have found 15-year-old little bars of chocolate in people's houses because once they got it home, they just dropped it and they completely forgot about it. They might move it around occasionally, be like, yeah, I got to go through it at some point, but they never did. Just because it's free doesn't mean it's useful, and it's taking up space in your home. When I talk to people about quilting material, I believe the same thing that Bonnie Hunter believes, in that you pay the same amount for that last inch on your fabric that you paid for all the inches that you used. A square inch is a square inch. They all cost the same. So your scraps should be used, not just tossed out. Even if you're not going to use them, give them to somebody who will. But a lot of us have a lot of stuff we've gotten for free. Now, I've also mentioned the free table at my guild, and so yeah, I have come home with lots of fabric from there, because they go into my charity quilting, and they leave, though. They get used and they leave, and I use every little bit of it that I possibly can. But just like every inch of fabric costs the same, every square foot in your house or apartment, you're paying to heat it. You're paying taxes on it. You're paying air conditioning. Today and yesterday were over 80 degrees. My air conditioning is on, and so is my fan. Just before we started, the fan started making the chain tink against the glass around the light bulb, so I used some painter's tape from my drawer unit, and I just taped the two dangly bits together. I felt pretty good about that, actually. I was like, yes, I have done a 1-minute hack. But anyway, you're still paying the same. It's taking up space. It's living in your home rent-free, is basically what it is. And if you have a bunch of these, let's say you love to go to these shows, you might be losing an entire bottom part of a closet that you could be using for other things that are more important. So just because something's free doesn't mean it's not costing you. So I'd like you to consider that when you're looking at your things and say, okay, I think I'm going to go through all of those free water bottles I've picked up along the way, and I only use these 3. Get rid of the rest. It doesn't matter that they were free. Stress balls. You only have 2 hands. How many of those things do you need? Okay, some of them are cute, some of them are globes, some of them are pigs, whatever they are. You still don't need 8 million of them. So that's the tip for this week. Okay, let me update you on some quilts. The Hexi quilt, the under the water quilt, I still don't have a good name for that. I'm still looking for good names for that quilt, so if you've got one, give it to me. Has been basted. So this last weekend, since I could open the doors, I taped the backing down in my front hallway. I put the batting and I spray basted everything, and so it's now sitting over here. And looking at the piles that I have of quilts that need quilting, I don't know that I'm going to be doing a lot of new quilting assembly tops for the next few months. There's the mystery quilt that we're doing together. I'm going to keep working on that. I have a new handwork project. I'm going to talk to you about that. And I do have the new half square triangle quilt that we talked about last time, and I'm going to occasionally work on that as well. But I have 5 quilts of mine that are all done except for doing the actual quilting. The underwater quilt's going to involve beading and a bunch of other stuff too, and it's going to take at least 50 hours to quilt, I think, because of how I'm going to quilt it. So, given limited time, given the book that we've talked about before, you may be watching me doing some quilting on some of these during these sessions, or I might just work on the tops that I just talked about. But overall, we're making some progress here. And I am gaining some ground on the great flooring debacle that you've heard about on here. So I'm pretty happy about that. Now, the backing of the Hexi quilt. I thought this would be kind of fun. The front is all hexagons, and they're small. They 1 inch to a side. And so I was thinking of the saying, fish gotta swim, birds gotta fly. That was a song. And there's also the saying that you can't teach a bird can't teach a fish to fly. So the backing that I chose is all birds on branches with flowers and things. And so I thought that was kind of fun. So I'll make sure that I show you that. But as you know, when I am doing something, I tend to take some of my bigger squares or strips and I do a pieced backing as a way to help me keep my larger scraps under control. And I didn't do it this time on purpose. The reason I didn't do it this time is because there's so many seams on the front. I was concerned that if I had a lot of seams on the back, I'd get a lot of really big, thick, chunky sections. So I didn't want any major hills that the machine was going to have to fight its way through or that would throw off the quilting or anything. So I intentionally did one big piece, and then I took another piece the same length and I split it. Well, it was shorter, so I split it and sewed the 2 pieces together and then put that on the side. So that's how I handled the backing. So I only have 3 seams in my backing. That ought to help keep control over the whole thing, because there's going to be a ton of quilting in that quilt. What I've decided to do is do a lot of thread changes. So I'm going to, when I quilt across, I'm going to try to pick a color that's very similar to the one in the front. So you'll see the dimension, but it won't be like white on dark blue, which is if I picked, a color contrast. You could have sections that the thread was much more noticeable, whether it was significantly darker or significantly lighter. So I'm going to do a lot of that, which means a lot of thread changes. I'm going to do a lot of stops and starts, because the kelp, as it goes up, I'm going to quilt curvy lines up the kelp and all the way back down a bunch of times. So that's going to take a bunch of time. So that would leave me the fish, and the fish I'm thinking I'm going to actually quilt the scales on. So that's a lot of quilting. So it's going to take me a good amount of time. I do have some other quilts that aren't going to take as much concentration, and so what I'm probably going to do is do something that's a little bit easier to kind of get warmed up, and it'll probably be a charity quilt. And then I will work on the hexie quilt, and then when I'm tired on the hexie quilt, if I still have time, then I might switch back to that first one again and just kind of coast my way through a little bit more on another quilt. So I'm going to have these things kind of all in flux, and so hopefully you'll get to see them here on the channel as I'm working on them. I am going to be doing the quilting on my standard sewing machine here. It's just a regular basic, it's a Janome Memory Craft 6500. This is the most advanced of my sewing machines. I have a lot older, and so a lot less advanced. The fact that this actually had decorative stitching was such a fun thing for me, the concept that I would have that many stitches. Someday would I like a nice, big, fat, chunky one with, you know, a huge amount of throat space and everything? Yes, I would. But this will do, and I will be able to quilt all of these quilts that I'm planning on doing on this domestic machine. So that's what's going on with that list here. If this is your first time here, because I have the full-time job and I do this and I'm writing a book and a bunch of other stuff, there's nothing left in my brain by this time of the night, so I have to write it all down. So I'm just checking my notes here. So, okay, next. The mystery quilt's next. Okay, so when last we left the mystery quilt, your block should have looked like this. Okay, so we started with 4-inch blocks. We made half square triangles, so we still had fairly decent sized squares. We put them all together into a 4-patch, and now we're going to do a disappearing 4-patch with this, but it's not going to be the normal way to finish. So first of all, on your normal disappearing 4-patch, you would have made a pinwheel first, and I don't think I grabbed a pinwheel. Hold on. I didn't. I only grabbed the ones from the block. Hold on. I have one over here, I'm pretty sure. Oh, no, I guess not. Well, that's a bummer. Alright, one more second here. I might have accidentally put stuff on. Here it is. I put stuff on top of it. Okay, so if you start with a pinwheel in the middle and you do this technique, you get a double pinwheel like this. When you put this next to 3 other blocks, this corner here is a pinwheel, right? And then you have the little one in the middle. But we did not assemble this into a pinwheel. We assembled it like this. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do next, and the directions for this is going to be posted probably later tonight or tomorrow. It depends on when Scott gets a chance to do it. Alright, let me switch cameras here. Okay, now in the picture I showed this ruler. Okay, now when I showed it, I showed measuring 3/4 of an inch from this edge instead of the normal edge. Sorry, this one. Okay, and I'll show you why. I liked having the long dotted lines to line up against, but if I did it with the full inches, that 3/4 doesn't have the continuing line, and the numbers start to get in the way and it can confuse what you're doing. So I used an outer edge so that I could get the 3 lines here. Now, if I was using this ruler, okay, and I tried to do the 3/4, now it's under the dots here and it's a little bit harder to see, whereas on this side it's a little clearer. So look at your ruler and decide which way you want to do it and how you get your lines to line up the best. So what we're going to do is, on our block from the center, you're going to cut 3/4 of an inch on each side. Okay, so I'm lining this up with the dots on the 3/4 inch line going right down my center seam. Cut. And then Because I don't want to dislocate things very much, I just rotate the mat. And now I'll do this side. Now I'm going to go the other direction. I do want to double check and make sure everything is still lined up. Okay. So 3/4 of an inch on this side. And rotate again. And 3/4 of an inch here. Now this is a little wobbly because this is one of those little folding tables. This is the one that I use, you know, for retreats and things like that. Okay. Now this is a brand new blade, so I'm not sure why it didn't cut very well. So I may need to get my scissors out. Let me close my blade here. Alright. So I'm just using the edge to just pop those last little threads. There we go. Okay. So this is our original design. Okay. Now, in the instructions for the round, I have both this picture and the rearranged picture. Okay? So I don't want you to be concerned that you're going to be left without. I'm just going to move a couple things over here because they're in my way here. Okay, now what's weird is almost everything is going to move. The only thing that doesn't move is the center. Okay? So, first of all, what I'm going to do is I am going to take the points. The reason we wanted the points to be nice is because they're going in the middle now. So I'm going to rotate the block like this. So a middle that's the background color here and then my focus color are now next to each other. So now I'm going to do the same thing with these two. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is take these outer triangles and switch them and rotate them. I know, it seems like a lot, but once you start doing it, it'll make more sense. And this is our new center block. So to give you some examples of what it'll look like, this one doesn't have a lot of contrast, but you can see. Here's a couple more. Now, when your friends look at these, this one was cut a little bigger. This was cut with 1 inch instead of with 3/4 of an inch. So I apologize. I'm going to take this one away. But when your friends look at this, they're going to think that you cut all these little triangles around the edges, and you didn't. You didn't cut them at all. It's just this piece from the outer edge, and it makes your 2 points here. Okay? So, this is our center block. Now, if you're doing the lap size quilt, you can up the size of your cuts. Okay, so this is, I'm going to just double check this. Right, so this was cut 1 inch from the center in both directions. And then when I went with the 6-inch blocks, you can see here, these were cut 1 1/4. So you still get the same basic proportions, but they're on the bigger pieces. So it's going to be a larger cut on each side. And I don't think I included that in the instructions. So I'm going to try to remember to make that change. But this is our center block. So I hope you like our middle block. So you're going to have either 9, 16, or 25 in the middle. When that's done, we're going to have a pieced interior border and then a solid exterior border, and then you can decide if you want to add any more borders on, particularly for the lap size. You might want to add another border or two depending on how big you want it. But for the table toppers, I think having just those two borders ought to finish it, and then it's quilting and binding time. So we are doing well on our scheduling here. The next step you're not going to get for a month. So you have a month to do these blocks. Now, one thing that you might want to consider, and this has come up with a couple of you who've talked about not necessarily wanting just the one fabric. Something else you can do. Let me switch back to camera 3. Okay, so here's our new block. And then these are some of the ones that I did first. You could have a different background, or you could have different... Now these aren't sewn yet, which is why they don't line up on size, okay? Just remember that. We've got all these seam allowances that are going to go away. But you could alternate the colors. And I'm just going to pretend... Well, actually, no, hold on. I have some of these that are pre-cut. Sorry that this is getting a little confusing here. But if you decide to go this route with a couple of different backgrounds, the fun thing is you'll get an additional design here. I'm going to get there, I promise. Now, if you made a bunch of blocks that were all different materials, if you wanted to, this would be the time... Hold on, I got myself turned around here. That you could mix and match them. So let's say you had one that was all pink and one that was all yellow and one was all blue. You could take the different elements and switch them around, which could be kind of fun. Okay, so now I need one more of these. Okay, so when you put these together, these four are going to make a 4-patch that look like they're just kind of floating in the middle. So this could be fun if you weren't sure which way you wanted to go, or if you decide to later on do this design again. It could be fun, and you still wouldn't have to have a ton of different materials, especially if you've got a wild fabric like this. But with like this pink one, I could have alternated and had, you know, like one piece that was pink in each of the different blocks. Now keep in mind that the little triangle here will match this big piece here, so you are going to have that where each side is going to be kind of a harlequin effect. But you could do this multicolored if you wanted to, and that would be a great way to use up a ton of 4-inch squares. Oops. A ton of 4-inch squares out of your scrap bag. Okay? So I hope that you like the design, and we can move forward from there. So I have a ton of these that I did already. I did change my thread over to black, so I can sew some of them today with you. And we can move forward at that point. But there are a couple more things I wanted to talk about before I get to sewing. So hopefully you're enjoying the mystery, because today's like the big reveal for the main block. And if it's your first day, know that the whole goal was to come up with a design that wouldn't be overly stressful. So hopefully that is also working. Okay. Now, I was mentioning Judy earlier. So yesterday was our guild meeting, and she was mentioning that she had made the half-square triangles for this project the way that I told you to. Because it's a mystery, I couldn't just say, you're going to need X number of half-square triangles this size. Okay? So she is doing another project, and she showed me this. This is a Bonnie Hunter ruler. It's the Essential Triangle tool. I watched the video earlier today. It seems like a pretty good product. And it does have something in common that other rulers have that might come in handy if you want to do a bunch of these. So we didn't square this half square triangle up until the end because I want you to square the block at 5 inches, because if you're off a little bit, it's nice to know you've got a little extra cushion in there, and so it'll make it easier to trim the once rather than multiple times. So this is the ruler. I don't have... No. I have to have blank paper here somewhere. Hold on. Oh, that's going to knock over my light stand. Okay, well, I'll put it up against the blue here. Maybe you can see it better there. So there's all kinds of different lines and stuff on it. But the thing that I really like, and you can see here that green triangle, there's a bunch of different rulers that have that. There it is. You can see it better now. And what happens is you line the ruler up against your strip set so that that little triangle hangs off the edge. And what that does is, number one, you can use a narrower strip set because you don't have that extra height you're going for. And it eliminates one dog ear at the beginning. You still are going to have to cut the other dog ear, but you still cut it down. Plus you've saved fabric, and you've saved a little bit of time. So that's really nice. Another nice thing is that if you are doing the larger triangles, you are going to wind up with this little tiny point at the top. Now this one isn't colored green, so having my finger there isn't going to help. But if you trim that as well, excuse me, you will wind up with a hole in the middle when you just lay the pieces next to each other. But when you sew them together, you get less bulk in the middle. So it's a nice little ruler for that. I am going to do a couple of test runs to make sure that it works the way that Bonnie says it does. I'm sure it does, but you know I'm a trust but verify kind of gal. If you have a way that you really like to do the half square triangle, whether it's doing it on a roll, whether it's doing the 8 at a time method, if it's doing the triangle method, that's all fine. Go ahead and do it. I'm all for it. Now, the one thing that I was mentioning to Judy that I would consider doing would be, instead of cutting using the ruler, marking my cut lines with it so that you can sew on the bias without having the stretching. A lot of times when people have two triangles that they're putting together, they're trying to put two bias edges together, and as it's going through the machine, even with an even feed foot, it may not go and be pulled through evenly, and you can wind up with a curved seam, a curved piece. And then when you try to flatten it, it doesn't flatten very nicely. So if it was something that was going to need a lot of precision, I would probably still use the ruler and mark it, but then I would sew those diagonal lines first and then cut them apart. And then that way they're going to be sewn while they have the rest of the rigidity of the strip to help hold everything in place. So I hope that that makes sense. It still looks like a good product, and I am going to play with it, and we'll see how that goes. But I love specialty rulers. I do. I have a ton of them. They had all used to be on that wall, and then they fell off the wall, so they're now in boxes because I had to box everything up for the floors. But they're nice to have, but keep in mind how much you're going to use a ruler. How much do you make those kinds of blocks before you invest a lot of money in the rulers? I've had people who've told me that they bought a tool for a specific thing, and then they don't like working with that thing, so they basically wasted the money. An example of that might be a hexi ruler. If you've never worked with hexagons, you might not want to invest $20, $30 in a specialty ruler until you know that you're really enjoying it, because that otherwise is a waste of money. She also, Judy also gave me these to play with. These are ruler stickers by Gudrun Erla. and GE Designs. And they're a lot of fun. They're these arrows, and what you do, you can see on the back here, is you put them on your rulers to mark where you want things to align, rather than doing the blue painter's tape that I've talked about here before. The way Judy told me is if it's kind of like color forms. It feels like you're working with color forms, because you can just put them on and then take them off and stick them back on the page, and then use them again. This looks like something that I would use a lot, because for me, I use the blue tape because I want to know right where to line things up, and my eyes get tired, I get tired, and all of a sudden I'm lining up on the wrong line. So in doing the 3/4 inch for these, I put my blue painter's tape just on the inside of that 3/4 inch line, because I want to see the 3/4 inch line clearly. But that blue painter's tape basically said, no, you want the line right next to me, so that I didn't mess it up. Okay, because who wants to redo or have to sew another patch because you cut it at 1 inch instead of 3/4, and now the corner pieces aren't going to fit anymore. You see what I mean? So something like this I think is a really good idea. Thank you, Judy, for loaning these to me. I will try to get them back to you in 2 weeks. If I haven't had a chance to play with them, though, I might ask you for a little bit longer. Okay, so Patricia said that she has this ruler too. Patricia, do you like it? Do you use this a lot? I know that Judy said that she used hers to do a whole bunch of things not that long ago. So, I always love to have recommendations for products. So, okay, Patricia loves it too. So, keep that stuff in mind. One thing I would also avoid on a specialty ruler is something with a very limited number of size options. I bought something, it was like 10 years ago, where I paid $30 for a ruler that only cut either 2 or 3 sizes of the block that I needed. And I realized that the project I was doing used one of those sizes, but then it was completely useless for a bunch of other things. So I really recommend. Now this one has several different sizes and several different ways to use it. The rulers I tend to use the most are Deb Tucker's, because everything has at least 8 sizes on it, and that gives me a lot of flexibility. But those are the ones that I've bought and I use a lot, but that doesn't mean I don't like some of the others either, also. So okay, so for BH projects, I don't know what you mean by BH projects, Patricia. And Judy, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I will play with it. I'm probably going to do things like the quarter square triangles with it. It's that center hole that I think would scare people off when they saw it when they laid the pieces out. And so I just want to confirm that it's going to come out the way I think it's going to. But yeah, Bonnie Hunter is great. BH product. Yeah, Bonnie, when she does it, she also demos a lot of her stuff when she's teaching. So it's easier if you're using her rulers to, no, Pat, I know that was you talking about Bonnie Hunter. I was commenting on Judy's about the flying geese. When you're doing a class with a teacher who has their own ruler, since they're going to be demoing that ruler, it's easier to follow along if you have it. It doesn't mean you can't do the project without it. There's a lot of ways to do practically anything, but a lot of instructors base their yardage measurements and everything on their specialty ruler. So, as an example, with this, you can get away with, let's say, a 2-inch strip to make 2-inch half square triangles, but you would need a 2 1/4 or a 2 1/2 to make them the other way. So I would, if I was doing it with the squares method, I would let you know that you needed more fabric because of the method and the ruler that I would be using compared to one of these specialty ones. So if you don't have a specialty ruler and you are following a pattern made by someone, I would make sure that I got a little bit of extra fabric, because all those little half inches can add up. So just a thought while you're doing it. So anyway, so that's a new ruler to me, but there's 8 million of them out there. It always amazes me how many different rulers and ways to accomplish some of the most basic of blocks, like the half square triangles, like the corner blocks, the peaky and squeak, is it the mountain block? So there's 8 million of these different things, and then you get into templates and paper piecing it. There's so many ways that we have to do these things. So it's worth finding a way that works for you and makes you happy to use it. There is nothing worse than a tool you dislike if you're trying to force yourself to use it. That's another reason to borrow from friends. So thank you. I'm borrowing this mostly for what I'm doing today, but I am going to give it a good try. And I'm going to decide, is this worth my investing in? And if it is, then I will get it and it will get used. But I have stuff that I bought thinking I was going to use it that I never did. So it happens to everybody. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're not using it and you have limited space, is it worth the space it's taking up? Is it worth the rent it's not paying? So kind of think these things through when you're doing them. So I was mentioning the 2 new quilts that I'm going to be making the tops for while I'm quilting my stack of quilts over there. And so the one I showed you, no, I don't have it. Well, I'm going to show it to you again on the computer. So let me, glasses on again. I wish I didn't need them. I got a laser surgery a number of years ago because I was nearsighted, and they said, well, you may need to wear readers at some point, and I'm at that point. But boy, I remember waking up right away and being able to just go and do. I didn't have to. I didn't need to do anything. I could just see instantly. Near, far, didn't matter. Okay, so, alright, I'm going to move this camera, and I'm hoping that I get it close to right, and then I'll switch it. I may have to hold it. Okay, so now let's go to camera 3. Okay, so, hold on, I gotta get where I can see it. Oh, no, I just lost it. Sorry. Okay, so this is the quilt that I showed you last time. And this is the one that I think I'm going to do using the 2-inch squares. But I also, now I'm going to hopefully not make anybody seasick here. Here we go. I also have this layout. Let me just close this here. Sorry, nope. Sorry, I'm messing everything up here. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do with the 2-inch squares. Let me rewind, have this make a little bit more sense. So I had my drawers over here of half square triangles that were stuffed. And then I made 100 signature blocks for our farewell blocks for our guild. When somebody leaves Springfield, we give them a stack of pre-made blocks that people have signed. And so you can take them and assemble them, and you'll have a bunch of signatures from your old quilting buddies. So I made a stack of 100, so it was about that big. But that meant, because it was the flip and fold method, I wound up with 200 2-inch squares, which I couldn't fit in the drawer. And so I said, okay, it's time for me to design some quilts to use up those half square triangles that I have. And so I, oh, and by the way, that's how the mystery quilt design came out. I wanted to use up some 4-inch blocks. And I said, what can I do with 4-inch blocks? And I created what is now our mystery quilt center block. That was a drawers full, got to do something with it. So I took out all the blocks that I had, and I divided them all up, and I didn't trim a lot of them. So when they go in the drawer, let me see if I can, well, it's kind of neat now, so they're not as raggedy as they were when I started doing this. Here we go. And they're wrinkled, some of them. Okay, so here's one, it's all wrinkled. But it still has the dog ears on them. Okay? Because I'm not going to take the time to trim this to a size until I know what size I need. Because half square triangles can be any size. You can trim it to anything. So I took my 2 inchers and I found out that half of what I had were red and white. More than half, actually. And I didn't want a mostly red and white quilt. So I went to the larger sizes that I had, the 4 and 4.5 inch, and I cut them down. So I wound up with 2 2-inch half square triangles and 2 regular 2-inch squares that went into my 2-inch square drawer. The 4.5s I wound up, trimming a little bit more to make it work. But that way I wound up with 2 of each of the colors, and it worked out really nicely. And so I'm going to be able to put them together into the quilt, ready to go. And it'll be all nice and flat, and it'll work out well. But that's why I don't trim them the first time, because that's a whole extra round of trimming. Okay? If I had trimmed them to 4.5, and then I wanted the 2-inch squares, then I'm cutting them again. So why bother? Just do it the once. So I went through and I found everything and I got it all done. But I also had a whole bunch that were 1.5s. And I said, well, what am I going to do with the 1.5s? And so I have 3 designs here that I'm debating between. But what I'm going to do is, instead of doing each block a different color like it shows, I'm doing, on this one, I'm doing the 9s as a simple 9 patch of each color. So let's come back to this camera. So here's design number 1. Now, obviously the purples and things aren't going to line up. I didn't want to go into the program and change each one of these to different 9 patches. But each of the 9 patch will be triangles all pointing the same direction. And so I went in and I found all of those that I had, and now that I had at least 9 of that block, so that I can do one of these. And then when I'm done, I'll see kind of how many I have, and I might have to make a few of these, but not many. This is going to be a handwork project, so this is the one I'm going to carry around. Each of these triangles is going to finish at 1 inch. I mean, each of these squares is going to finish at 1 inch. So it's going to take quite a bit of time to do all of that piecing. Pet, I'm using EQ7 because I'm too cheap to buy. I think they're in 10 now, I heard. 10's coming out. But I'm using 7 because I usually do my designing on paper. But for the ability to change colors and rotate blocks, I really do like EQ7. I will say, though, that I don't know if the later versions have it, but there are no hexes in EQ. So all of the designing for the fish quilt had to be done on paper. Okay, so this is design number 1. I kind of like how I've created these arrows going up and down. So I might go with that. I kind of liked this one. It's kind of confetti-like, and it's also kind of zingy like fireworks, so I thought that was kind of fun. And then this one is a little bit more regular and a little bit calmer. So I'm not sure which of these I'm going to do yet, but it gave me a chance to play around with it and to see kind of what I like. So one of these three is likely going to be the final contender for the handwork quilt. I'm mentioning it now, but you will probably not see it for quite a long time. You might see blocks up on the design wall at some point, just floating around at the top, but until I have enough of them sewn, it's not going to look like much of anything. So I'm just letting you know that at this point. So those are the two new quilt tops. But I have the 5 quilts to quilt, and so I'll be working on those mostly. And I did get one of the conferences that I was aiming to speak at, and then just before, like 2 minutes before we got online, I found out I did not get the conference in early July, which has taken a lot of pressure off to finish the book in time for the first week of July. I have an extra month this way. So, I have been fighting the book. Because in every project you get to this point where you have to push through, and that's where I am on the book. It'll be great when I get there, but I'm at the slogging stage. Just like with any quilt, you can get to a slogging stage and have to just push through. So that's that. Okay, so if you're new, this is the point where I'm going to do some sewing. You're welcome to watch. I'll put on the other camera. I'm going to be piecing the mystery blocks, and then I still have a bunch of them to cut, but you know what I can do is I can also lay out all in the one color so you can see how they interact and how they play with each other. Where's the stack of them? Here we go. That way I don't have to move the ones that I have with the cut ones. Alright, so let's switch over. So just so you can see, if you're making these, so if you were doing the 9-patch table runner, the small one, now these have not been trimmed up yet, so they're not laying exactly perfect next to each other. Those are my temperatures. Here we go. And now let's raise this up so you can see it a little bit better. Nope. My camera's falling. Here we go. Let me get some of the distractions aside. There we go. That's what your center will look like when it's done. So, just thought we'd like to take a look at that. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and do that sewing now. I don't usually have black thread in my machine, so it's kind of exciting to me to have it on. I did all of these white ones a while ago, and it's been tough because I would have them here on my table, and I'd have to make sure that everything was put away so that if I accidentally panned by it, you didn't get to see it early, so that was kind of fun. If this is your first time here, this is the point where I'm going to do some sewing, like I said. If you've enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, and if you hit the bell, it'll remind you when I'm coming on. I do tend to turn on the live stream 15 minutes before we're actually going to start, so that you can go ahead and get a cup of coffee, get through the restroom or whatever, and then be here when it gets started. Now with 7 minutes, I'm obviously not going to get a whole lot done. Now in this particular case, what I'm going to do is I tend to put like the top left and top center together, and so I'll go down the left side, top, middle, bottom, and then I'll do the next block, top, middle, bottom, top, middle, bottom, top, middle, bottom, and then I'll add in the top right, middle right, bottom right onto the ones I've already done. And since they're all strung together, it's easy to know where it goes. And I keep them strung until I have the 3 patches across done. When the 3 patches are done, then I will cut them apart and then put them together. Oh, before I forget, the new 2-inch patch. I know I'm kind of all over the place today. I'm sorry. There is a design element in that to make the window look right, because it's half black and half white. It's not going to be black. It's going to be dark and then light. It means that in each block, I need one really dark upper left 4-patch in order to make that frame connect. So I've made my first 60 blocks. These are them. And actually, no, this is the first 60. I need 120 total. So these ones have to have that upper left dark triangle. The opposite side of the block has white, but almost every square has white, so I'm not worried about that. But these I had to make sure that I put that dark one in the corner. Each block has 2 4-patches of triangles, one with the super dark, and then the other one it doesn't matter. So I made sure that I picked the darkest of the half square triangles that I had for the corners, and I put it together like this. Each of these is 10 high, not that that matters. And so just like with the quilt that we're doing now, I'll sew 1 and 2 together, 3 and 4 together. But I'll do all of the 1s and 2s, then all the 3s and 4s, and then 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, so that when it's time to put them together, it's easy to do and it makes sense. And what'll be nice is I can use these as leaders and enders for the no, I can't. I apologize. Because this is white, I need white thread for this. I do have some leaders and enders that are black or dark colors, and so I'll have to pull them out of my bin, because with it being black thread, I can't do it with this. I apologize. When I'm doing something with white, though, I can do it with this. And so this will be sitting around for quite a while, but that's okay. That's what Leaders and Enders project is all about. And so we've talked a lot about Bonnie Hunter tonight. If you don't know what Leaders and Enders are, go on her site. Bonnie Hunter is Quiltville, and there's a demo for the ruler that I was showing you, plus all of her other rulers. She's got 8 million demos. And she's kind of fun to just listen to, and she does huge mystery quilt projects. You'll be doing hundreds and thousands of blocks for her mystery quilts. So, if you're digging in on that one, just be prepared. It's going to take a bunch of time, especially if you want to keep up. So, anyway, like I said, I don't get to sew with black very often, so this is going to be a lot of fun. Alright, oops. I bring camera 3 back down and see if I can get it back over here. I'm hoping I'm not making anybody seasick, and I don't know why it's not tightening up like it should. There we go. Okay, so I don't have a leader right now, so I'm going to do it the old-fashioned way. Now, when you're sewing this together, the most important place to align is in the middle. If they don't line up at this end, make sure it's your centers that you're lining up. So this is our top left corner. Make sure you line up this corner. If any of the others don't match, that's fine, but this one needs to get lined up if you're going to have good lines in your quilt. Good junctions. I'm going to put my needle down. I'm going to butt right up to the needle. I'm going to hold my thread. Yes, I feel really bad I didn't have a leader and ender in here, but I just changed the thread as we were about to start the live stream. Now in my case, my 1/4 inch is right in the middle of this little arm. If you don't know where yours is, then make sure that you check that out. And you can do that by testing. If you sew a couple of squares together, let's say two 2-inch squares, then you know that when you press it, it should finish at 3.5. If it doesn't, then you'll probably need to go more scant or even expand depending on where you ended up to make sure you wind up with a 1/4 inch. Now in this case, because I've got you on here, I'm not doing this the way I told you that I normally would, where I would do the entire 1 and 2s together. I am going to do one more just because I'm going to use it as a leader for my next one. And then I'll cut off the first one and show you what I mean. Oh, it's now 8 o'clock right now, so I guess I'm going to just keep sewing. We're here the first and third Wednesday of every month. I do try to start and end on time. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. Please, if you have questions, you can email me at mail@StashBlasterQuilts.com, or you can leave comments in the comments section down here. And if you know me, you've got my number and you see me at meetings, so please feel free to reach out to me there. And thank you so much for coming. This has been really good for me to have a regular sewing thing, so that at the end of a long day of organizing, I can still take that break and zone in on something more that is good for my soul. Hopefully sewing is good for yours as well, and I will see you in the quilt world. Have a great night, and I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye-bye.